Reptichip sets the standard for reptile substrates. Made from the highest quality coconut available anywhere in the world, Reptichip allows enthusiasts and keepers to provide their reptiles with the necessary humidity and thermoregulation required for your animals to thrive. You can support the podcast by heading to reptichip.com/snakeboy or visit the link in the description below. This episode is brought to you in part by ExoTerra. If you're as passionate about reptiles and amphibians as I am, you know that quality matters. I use ExoTerra products on all my reptile and amphibian enclosures, which is why I'm excited to be partnering with them. From naturalistic decor to innovative lighting and enclosures of all sizes, ExoTerra has everything you need for your cold-blooded companions. ExoTerra. Make your reptiles feel at home. This episode is brought to you in part by Unlimited Exotic Pets. Every day is Veranda Day for Nick Lillis, and it shows. At Unlimited Exotic Pets, Nick produces high-quality monitor lizards with a deep commitment to ethical care practices and top-tier nutrition. These aren't just pets. They're responsibly bred, ethically raised animals. Whether you're looking for a new companion, starting a breeding project, or anything in between, Nick has you covered. Unlimited Exotic Pets, keeping and breeding quality without limitations. This is the Expert and the Idiot podcast. If you like the show and you'd like to support us, there's a link to our Patreon in the description below. Some benefits include getting access to new episodes up to a month in advance. There's also links to USARK and USARK Florida. If you're not already a member, please sign up. Enjoy the show. Well, you are a professional podcaster.
Or I play one on YouTube.
You and me both. So how did you go from like how many actual storefront like pet stores do you have now?
We have two. We basically, and it was, so it's funny because the second one, it was in the plan, just not that fast. So basically we started this first one with the mindset of, okay, this is eventually going to be the home office. This is going to be the hub, so to speak, because this is a 9,000 square foot building. We've got warehouse space. We have the breeder side, west wing. We've got the 3,000 foot showroom. So we kind of have everything we need to have this massive shop, but we can also feed smaller ones out of it. And so that was kind of the mentality when I, bought this place originally. And I knew certain cities I was going to want to go into, which are nearby, close enough that we can just feed them. We can make deliveries to them, but far enough away that there's little cannibalization from the original. And there was one other reptile shop anywhere in the tri-state area, and that was in Henderson. And I'm friends with, the individuals who owned it at the time. They run all of our local shows. And I knew that I got the vibe from our conversations that they were wanting to focus on the shows and not on their shop. And so we I planned on looking at opening a second one in late 2026. However, they approached me in December of 2025. I'm sorry, late 2025. They approached me in December of 2024, and they're like, hey, we're kind of looking at doing this. We got to talking, and by mid-January, I'd acquired their shop and just kind of revamped it to turn it into a Metazotics. So it happened about roughly 10 or 11 months earlier than I had planned for, which kind of put us in a tizzy, but wow, that's where we're at now.
So, I mean, I love pet shops. I absolutely love, especially like reptile focused ones are my favorite. I mean, like I'm not a fan of the ones that are, 60% dogs,
Mhm.
and, things like that. But an exotic pet shop, something with reptiles is, like I just have so many good memories from either being a kid and going to shops like that, or even being a teenager, or, like driving on my own and like exploring and driving like an hour to go to a cool reptile shop, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, like where I'm at, most of the mom and pop shops have closed, so it's so encouraging and cool that you have two shops, but you're looking at it. It seems like you're looking at it from a like a large scale operation
Mhm.
to where you can get that. You can lower your prices probably a little bit, right? And just focus on the volume, which is that's what all the online stores are doing, right? And that makes it impossible for the mom and pop shops to keep up.
Well, I approach it from one, understand I've been developing this in my mind since I was 6 years old. You know what I mean? This has been, up here for a very long time. And, it's funny because there were two things that stories I share. So my wife, I she I forgot that I'd said this to her, but I know there were two things from the same time period that were stated. One, in my high school yearbook, I say that I want to retire at the age of 40. Now, I
Hmm.
didn't mean retire and not do anything. I didn't want to work for anyone else at the age of 40. And I also, at 16 years old, told my wife I'm going to open a reptile specialty store one day. And, she brought that back up when we opened this. You told me that when we were 16, and it happened to take place when I was 40. And
Wow.
it wasn't planned that way. Life took me in many other curves and directions. It wasn't a straight line by any means. But the opportunity presented itself. And luckily, the last 20 years prior to opening Metazotics, I was in multi-unit retail management. And that involved seeing business trends all over the country because my stores, I everywhere from Michigan to California and everywhere in between. I had stores all over the place. It allowed me to learn how to open new stores, how to close stores, how to hire properly, interview properly, reading and managing P&Ls, and it completely instilled in me how to grow and grow properly. And
Hmm.
I've made mistakes along the way. Luckily, I got to make them with someone else's money, when working for a corporate environment, right? Um, but it gave me the tools, experience, and skill set to approach this from a little bit different perspective, I guess, where in order to make it work, I had to have the right margins, and that's where the volume comes in. You have to offer something different than anywhere else. If you're going to offer everything just like PetSmart, Petco, whatever, they're going to beat you every time because you're not going to be able to compete with those price structure for very long.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't want it to be a pet store, meaning we are a reptile specialty store. It's
Hmm.
reptiles and amphibians. If there's a mammal in here, it's to feed something. That's the only way this works, and it's because I wanted to fill a niche, and it's the fastest growing um, segment in the pet trade. Right now it's reptiles. This is the big thing, but it's not just having reptiles on hand. I knew I had to have things that you're not going to see anywhere else. You're not going to see these at a regular pet shop, and it doesn't have to be the wonderful, I don't have to have Nile monitors, and because we don't work with things like that, we're not going to, that's not for the average person. So we don't carry sulcatas. We don't carry big monitors. I don't carry retics or berms, anything that I think is going to be more than what the average person can handle. But
Hmm.
you're going to see green bush rat snakes that you never see in any other pet shop. You're going to see, some higher end colubrids that you probably won't see anywhere else. I've got urban camo ball pythons for sale on the floor, so
Wow.
there's high end everything, but there's also leopard geckos. You see it all. So that was it. I wanted to approach it where it's an experience when someone walks in. It's not just a pet store. And being that we do have such a honed in focus on what we do, it allows me to hire people who have the passion, not just needing to, make XYZ amount of money each week. They're here because they love what they're here for. So it allows us to, I think, continue on that kind of model where I'm going to ensure we don't grow faster than we're capable. Because the thing that is the hardest to replicate, we can replicate the footprint. We can replicate, the paint struggle, the colors, the flooring, we can replicate what animals are in stock. We can replicate the name, the pricing. But what I need to ensure that we're able to replicate over and over is the ambiance, the expertise within the store, the passion within the store. And so a lot of that is us kind of home growing our management teams to put into these stores rather than going out and finding someone local and hoping they will have the same ethics and mentality, that we do. So far, so good. It's working.
How do you do that? Because it seems like it's really like a labor of love. Like you don't give off the vibe that you're one of the people that are like, you got to hustle and grind, get those numbers up, like you don't give that impression at all. Yet the success of Metazotics is like obvious, like it's just sort of blatant, like you look at the pictures of the store and they're immaculate. And it makes you look at that and be like, that's a reptile shop that I want to go into. Mm-hmm. So is it purely your passion that's fueling that? And, like, cause sometimes that whole like hustle and grind thing is like exhausting to me. Like that's just like mentally fatiguing, because in my opinion, the passion and that the desire, the love of what you're doing is more important than just that, hustle,
Mm-hmm.
Get that money, like, so how do you balance those two things, and how do you foster that love and turn it into a healthy business?
So I could even take reptiles out of the equation, because it was the same thing that made the groups of individuals I had on my team successful in my previous job for years and years. And it's money only plays a factor for me to the point of ensuring that we have enough to do what we need to do. That's really it. I mean, money has never really been a driving factor for me ever. And there were times I was offered very nice positions to relocate to, different cities, Miami and Chattanooga and all this. And I passed on all of them because I like Evansville, Indiana, where I've been born and raised, and I'm just going to stay here. But what I do really, really enjoy is solving the problem. And that's how that's how I approach business in so many ways. It's a puzzle. And I really enjoy understanding human behavior, why we do what we do, and more importantly, how can we get others to do what we feel is best for whatever situation we have. So with that in mind, I don't approach business as this amount of money is what we need. I have to do it whenever creating budgets and all the numbers. And I'm numbers driven, because to me, it's not about how much money do we have? It's this certain number is the final result of all of these behaviors that we create. And if we create all of the right behaviors, sales, numbers, money, that'll get there. That'll come. The end result will come. But what I really enjoy is determining what behaviors need adjusted. What do we need to get better at? What do we need to think more of? What is it that we need to figure out how to better explain and educate customers on? Because, for example, I'll go back. When I worked for it was an optical company, a very massive optical company. And we had what are called KPIs, just like most businesses do, key performance indicators, right? And a lot of these were what people would call add-ons. So when selling a pair of glasses, here's some other features. And the thing is, while they're called add-ons, and for a lot of other people, they see them as, okay, just trying to upsell, right? The truth of the matter is, these different options have benefits. There's a reason that they exist. And they're more important to some people than others based on lifestyle, medical needs, what have you, right? Well, the trick is, it's not about selling it. It's about getting the customer who's on the other side of the table from you in a place where you can properly educate them and let them make their own decision. And as funny as it sounds, though, because it's like, oh, so you just need to talk to them. No, you have to get them where they are comfortable listening to you and actually taking in the information you're giving them. And if you do that right, those KPIs, those options will be there. My teams, I've often talked about one team in particular, my home team, before I became multi-unit, when I was managing one location. It was probably just the greatest group I've ever had assembled. They were just phenomenal. The newest person on the team had been there for almost 5 years. And This is in retail, so
yeah.
And I mean, that individual ended up becoming a multi-unit leader themselves. But this group was so good that this store had the highest KPI attachment rate in the company. No one could even come close to us. But at the same time, we had the lowest refund percentage in the company. And what I was so proud of is it meant we can educate properly. Those results will be there because of the behaviors. But we have done our jobs in ensuring that we're linking the right thing to the right people because they don't regret the purchase afterwards. They don't come back and refund. They're happy with what they got, even though they probably spent a little more in the process. So I kind of look at that in the same way here, where it's not about, throw all this on and get as much in, a transaction as you can. It's about building a relationship and where the individuals who we help trust us, trust what we're telling them. We're not going to try to push something they don't need, but understand you don't need a reptile in the first place. So everything that we're talking about is all optional in the first place. But if you're going to care for this animal properly, this is something that's, you're going to want it. And so as long as we're doing that properly, then we're creating relationships that are long-term and the results are there. The money will be there. The numbers will be there. And when the numbers aren't there, I don't harp on people about you need to sell more. Instead, I look at, okay, what behaviors do we need to adjust or practice on to fix where this problem is to give us the results that we need long-term? So I approach it a little differently than what I think some do. I prefer to be a leader as much as I am a manager, and I prefer to coach, not talk at. Let's get better at what we're doing. So, I mean, little example, and this isn't even business related. It's just our mentality. Every day, the team gets at least 15 minutes on the clock for study time. And we'll assign different things that we want them to study on. Sometimes, like right now, have an individual, Caleb, who works for us, just book report. Pick a book. I don't care what, because I've got a whole library out here for him. Some of the, best books that are out there, when it comes to reptiles, I've been collecting for years. Pick a book. I don't care how far you get into it in 15 minutes, but I want to know what you learned from it in that 15 minutes that you had it. And you can spend as much time on that book, as many days as you want. But that's where we're just developing more knowledge because I want us as strong as we can be.
Yeah, it's that really connects with me. I used to work at a pet store, and I ended up being like an assistant manager, which was a horrible gig because it was like salary and, it was one of the bigger ones.
It sounds great on paper, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And then you do the math and you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm making $11 an hour. But I remember, any store that I went to, if I transferred to a store, their fish sales would go way up, and I would spend a lot of time in the fish area. We didn't have reptiles, thank God. Most of the time we did at some stores. But I remember just driving those sales up, not because I was trying to sell people more expensive fish or supplies, but because I wanted the people to have the absolute best experience they could with fish keeping. And so it wasn't like me thinking like I want to drive more sales. It was me thinking, if you get this filter, you're going to be happier. If you get this much gravel instead of this much, it's going to be actually less maintenance. If you do, a larger tank, it's actually less maintenance. If you get this fish, even though they're more expensive, you're going to be much more entertained by them, by watching them and their behavior, and then all of a sudden you have like these friends that are coming back and are talking to you and telling you the behavior that they're observing or whatever, and that was so much more important than just thinking about, all right, we have these fish, they're $20 a piece. We need to sell as many of those as possible, So like what you're saying, like really resonates with me. And it makes so much sense that you're trying to give them the best experience possible as a keeper.
Yeah, that's it. It's actually what you're describing right now. It's like, I don't think you even realize what it was you were actually selling. And because you're proving a point I say all the time. I say, I don't sell reptiles. I don't sell reptile supplies. I don't sell reptile habitats. What I sell is passion. And once I've sold passion, they buy these different things to go feed that passion that, was just kind of shared with them. And that's what you did. You were sharing passion for those fish and how this can be so much better and so much more enjoyable. And it's that energy and that enthusiasm behind it that people then gravitate. That's tearing down that wall that I was speaking about just a moment ago on, you just want to sell me something. No, once they feel your passion, that wall goes away and then they're opened up for the education. And the more educated we are, we will make larger purchases because we now understand why this is what it is and how it will benefit what we're after. So yeah, I get it, man. I get it.
Yeah, it's passion is everything for me. I mean, even with this, and just hearing, you talk on CCR and any other podcasts you've done, you're just so passionate about reptiles. And like, I mean, how did you end up, how long have you been obsessed with reptiles? And when did you realize that, hey, maybe I can just make this my life? Maybe I can make this dream come true. This episode is brought to you by Chewy. Most people think of Chewy for dog and cat food, but if you keep reptiles, you should absolutely be using them too. Chewy carries everything from all the brands you trust, like Exoterra, Arcadia, Zoomed, and everything in between. Live feeders to frozen rodents, enclosures, substrate, heat lamps, thermostats, water bowls, misters, and more, all in one place, shipped straight to your door. Sign up for Chewy Plus today, free for 30 days. You get free shipping, 5% rewards, and exclusive offers. I use Chewy, and you should too.
So it was 6 years old. 6 years old, hands down. Wow. I mean, I caught my first Eastern Black King snake when I was 6. And I'd liked reptiles before then. I was always fascinated by them. But that was the first in my hand, this is mine, and really getting to have that enjoyment. And it started then. I said that for me, back then it was pet store, right? That's how I kind of saw it. But as I got older, it was like, I like animals, but I'm not a dog person. I'm not, I don't want gerbils. That's just not me. It's all reptiles and amphibians. So by the time I was 11, I bred my first. Since the age of 11, I have bred reptiles every year since I was 11
Oh
years
my
old.
God.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been over 30 years, consecutive years of breeding reptiles, and even then, I had a very entrepreneurial and business mindset. Um, I mean, I remember having my first homemade rack system by 13. We're
Wow.
talking back in the mid 90s, early 90s. Um, it, it was always I want to do this bigger. How can I do more? And, I'm taking these babies to shows and trying to trade and sell. And I'm this little kid, I'm trying to do all this. To continue to grow the number that I had. And I mean, I was probably the only 13-year-old back then, and the only one I knew that had a whole reptile room, already back then.
Hmm.
I mean, and then of course, when I get into my like 18, 19, that dwindles down because, I get my own house, I'm out partying like we do. And so it goes down to I've got like 5 snakes, and then rent back up. But I've always known that it's something I wanted to do, but it had to be the right time for it to work because back then it wouldn't have worked.
Hmm.
It would have been, there wasn't the market that there is today. And I think, I think so much that's happened just in the industry as a whole. Ball pythons, if the ball python craze didn't take place, this industry would look completely different than what it does right now in terms of the number of eyes on it, the number of products in it, the number of money that's been dumped into it. And I also am very, very grateful for our local show promoters, the ones that I've purchased our second location from, because with them doing the shows in the area, the way they have, with the consistency that they have, it has significantly grown the local reptile community. And while I can be successful online and traveling to shows, I have to have that local community presence for the local shops to really succeed. And so
Hmm.
all that was, all that happened, and then COVID hit, and that was that catapult right there because sales were through the roof during COVID. And so that just put all the necessary capital to the side that was needed to pull the trigger and make this happen. So it's kind of a perfect storm,
Wow.
for it to pop off.
Isn't that wild? Like such an unfortunate circumstance can
Mhm.
cause so much fortune. It's
Yeah.
it's really crazy.
Yeah. And I think that luckily I got to see it happening with my other previous employer in that industry, which caused me to make proper steps in this one, meaning we saw the boom, there's a bust that was going to come and course correct, after that. And I think a mistake that a lot of people made with that boom was thinking this is the new normal way up here. That's
Yeah.
not the new normal. Take what you've made off of this temporary, piece. And if you invest in your infrastructure wisely, when you have this dip back, you will be able to stay above, the water line, and you'll outlast a lot of others that didn't prepare properly for that. So even though it seems like, man, you're opening this during this decline, but we're opening it in a way with the right mix that is going to keep us afloat, just perfectly. And so far that's been the case.
I mean, it's so easy to look at that. I mean, when did the whole ball python morph thing really explode? Around what year was that?
You're looking roughly early 2000s is when I mean, it was even a little bit before that, but when it really hit, because I remember, I think I was probably teen. So we're looking maybe like 23, 24 years ago, 25 years ago. A pair of het albino ball pythons cost me $700.
Hmm.
And that was, and I use that time frame because it was already popular, but this is when it started becoming more obtainable. So
Hmm.
that's when you really saw the explosion at the mid and low levels instead of just the top guys. having it. Because once you started having, I think I sold my first Mojave for $700, something like that, way back then.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny because the very first one I ever produced, I still have.
Wow.
Yeah, she's 19, 20 years old now. She's in the back. She's massive. So very first morph ball python still with me. But so it was back then is when it really started exploding, and it's had its dips multiple times through its cycle. And it's, and they're at one right now, it's at a dip. It's going to level back out. And I've said this over and over and over again. The ball python market does it to itself. Oh, and it's not because of how many are produced. Yes, that's going to affect things when you have, surplus versus, the demand that you have. The reason that particular segment continues to have the cycle and the dips, they do not allow the pricing to reduce itself down like anything else does, meaning the natural decline, over time, as you have more and more supply, the demand becomes a little bit less, the pricing should become a little bit less. What that particular segment has a very bad habit of doing is attempting to hold a price at this level for way too long. And what the perfect example is what happened with the banana ball python. And it happened back in Daytona. I think it was 2008, maybe. Somebody could correct me on that. But I think, and I'm going to make up these numbers because I may be somewhere close, but I don't remember exactly.
Sure.
But at that point, they were still selling, they were still being listed, for 12,000, somewhere and these are combos, banana combos. And they were somewhere in the $12,000 ballpark. Well, the problem is those combos and the banana gene in itself had been held so high for so long. You have 100 individuals sitting on hundreds of babies that aren't moving at that price anymore. And one person at the show drops it to like $6,000 in one swipe, which caused this domino effect at the show where you get people getting angry and it's drop. And it goes from like $12,000 down to about $2,000 over the course of a weekend.
Jeez.
And then what that does is if everyone sees the most visible and sought after morph at that moment do that, what does that mean for my Mojaves? What does that mean for my clowns? What is it? And so you see that was the first big crash that we saw of it. And, then it comes back and it keeps that cycle. But again, that's the problem. If that segment would let it just naturally creep down over the course of each year, you wouldn't see these big swings like we do. But we see the crashes that, keep popping. So it's just part of that particular beast. There's a whole lot more economic incentive in that particular group than there is some of the others. But it's like for colubrid guys, we don't mind things going down $25, $50 a year. And then they just level and they get to a point where they just stay. So that's the difference. The colubrid market doesn't try to hold longer than what it should generally. But the ball python market does.
Well, I'm officially a colubrid keeper card holder now.
What'd you get?
I've got a pair of Texas Indigos.
Oh, starting off right, huh?
Yeah,
those come from John.
Yeah. I've got a red phase male from John, and I got a black phase female from Kevin Butts. Very
nice, man. You jumped into some nice ones right out of the gate.
Yeah, I probably jumped into the deep end.
Yeah, you did. But that's cool, man. You definitely got some nice ones. Sounds like you got some good bloodlines too.
Oh yeah, they're so beautiful, and they're just so different than the boas and pythons. Definitely a lot more cleanup. It's I got very spoiled to coming home to, around 20 to 25 boas and pythons and kind of walking through the collection and going, everybody's still clean.
Yeah.
Everybody looks healthy, everything's fine. And now it's on my way home. There's going to be poop and we're going to We're going to clean it up and then it's time to relax.
Yep. Well, yeah, you went to the colubrids that are going to really pump it out too. So
I know.
No doubt about it.
But I think it's worth it. It's
Mm-hmm.
So far it's been very rewarding. But we'll see what I say when they're 7 feet long,
I tell you, I'm a firm believer that keeping colubrids will up-level your understanding of reptile husbandry and care. And I don't mean that as any kind of, oh, well, boas are easier, pythons are easier. No, because there's some that you definitely have to figure things out, to make it work. The reason I say it with colubrids is because if you get involved with a colubrid collection, so when you have multiple species, everything's different. I mean, there's some that, you're going to keep the same way, but there are so many species that fall under that umbrella that, it's okay. Some of them you're keeping with a 90-degree hotspot. Some of them you don't want to get above 80 ever. Some, humidity. Some you don't want any humidity, whatsoever in that cage. You have different, sometimes it's cooling cycles for breeding. Sometimes it's light. Sometimes it's misting. Sometimes there's so much. And then their behaviors are so across the board that you really, really do learn these nuances that translate to other species that, what, maybe I should try this because it works over here with these guys. And that was been the key all along. So I just think it really up levels you if you keep multiple species of colubrids.
Yeah, it's been, they're just so different. They're wildly different than my boas and pythons. Just, the way that they watch me, the way it's just it's a very different thing. You said the thing about heat. I'm keeping these guys at ambient in my house, because I'm in Florida. So daytime temperature is like 78, 79. Nighttime is like 71.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, which just kind of broke my brain for the first week where I'm sitting there like, this feels wrong that I'm feeding these snakes without a hotspot, this just isn't right. And even, talking to Kevin, he's like, yeah, I'll give a hotspot. And I'm like, oh, what's the hotspot? 79. I'm like, that's not a hotspot. That's my house.
Oh yeah. When I first got into a lot of the Asian species, it was an adjustment. Because even prior to that, it was always a lot of North American species or boas and, balls, things like that. So I was used to, for me, an 82-degree hotspot for, a lot of the North American colubrids. But then when you're starting to work with mandarins and bamboos and, all these, no. If you get mandarins 80, anywhere really close to that, they are not happy. They don't do well. So, for those, I always have those off all heat. I put them in the coolest rooms we've got, sometimes just in delis on the floor to have them as cool as possible. And they thrive like that. That's what they do. But I think when we were younger, and it's not as much now because of the information that's there, but we grew up being told reptiles need heat. Reptiles need heat. They're cold-blooded. They need heat. And I think that's where a lot of mistakes have been made over the years, is getting them too hot because we don't give them that choice to get away from it half the time. So it's, again, and I go back to, it makes you learn, it teaches you new things and adjustments and breaks you of bad habits, I guess.
Yeah, I was really torn between black milks or the indigos. And I know that black milks would have been a lot easier. And they are still super cool snakes, but there was just something about the indigos that I had to go that direction.
You definitely have a more interactive and intelligent species. Going with the indigos. So, if you really want to get experience as far as like having a experience, they're ones to pick over the black milks. I keep the black milks. I love them. I think I dig them because they're less flighty and squirmy than any other milk snake. They're the most calm milks that you're going to find. Big 6-foot black snake, chill. So I dig them for sure. But if you want to experience that intelligence, the indigo is the way to go.
Why do you think mandarins, like every single time I saw some mandarins at Daytona, and they always stop me in my track. Like I'm walking and I'm just like, oh my God, that's such a crazy looking snake. Why aren't they on like every colubrid guy's table? Why aren't they more popular?
I think for exactly what I mentioned before, the mistakes that get made with them. We don't want to break that habit, or it's we pick them up and we feel that they're cold, and you're like, this got to be too cold, and it's not. It really isn't. But then as soon as you start putting heat on them, they can live, they can, but they're going to be much more twitchy, jerky. They're not, going to do as well. And over time, heat's going to kill them, and I think that happens as well as if they're keeping them too warm, then they are not breeding for them, or, you're getting poor sperm, low egg count, poor, fertility. So it's all that. It's coming from the keeping. Even the babies, it's sometimes they're not wanting to eat, when they hatch. One of the best tricks when it comes to baby mandarins is cooling them, putting them in brumation. That's
Really?
that does it. Yeah. And almost every time that I've had problems with mandarins, I've either had to brumate them or I've had to get them colder than what I had them. And that starts kicking them in gear.
Wow.
So, and I think that's it. I think that's the mistake that most people make is they just try to keep them like a corn snake, and you can't do it with that species.
So would you say your primary love is colubrids?
Oh, hands down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a colubrid guy through and through. I enjoy seeing others. I mean, like, there's ball pythons that stop me in their track, stop me in my tracks. And I still work. I've got a room of ball pythons. Boas. I really, really like boas a lot too. And it's funny because since opening the shop, I've come to appreciate so much more than what I did before. Like, I was never a frog guy, but the first time I fed a Pac-Man frog here at the shop, I fell in love. I mean, the little thing, it was just smacking me away with its, it just didn't want it. And then all of a sudden it gets mad and just grabs it and using its, little hands here to shove this food in its mouth. And I'm like, you're the coolest thing ever,
Yeah.
So I'm really starting to like the frogs. But the thing that grabs my heart completely are Uromastics. I mean, the Euros, especially baby ornates, they're like little puppies. And I just love these things where I wasn't a lizard guy before. I didn't want legs. It's always been the snake guy. But those baby tortoises, I mean, it's hard to experience these and not just fall in love with all of it. All of it.
Yeah.
In fact, even inverts, I've never been a bug guy. I don't want to touch a roach. I'm not afraid of spiders, but they're not my thing. However, something that's important to me is if I'm not good at it, I want someone that is around me. And so I ensured that, like, our floor leader, Anna, is extremely strong in inverts. I mean, she knows them inside and out. And since having her on board, and she makes all the invert purchases, for the stores, we have a good selection, and I get to watch them. I get to see their behaviors and the kind of webs that they make and what they do. And it's really become this shift in my appreciation of them. I joke that we had a bioactive setup that I had green bush rat snakes in. And so we've also got the isopods and all that, in them. And somebody would come in and we'd be talking about this enclosure, and they're like, oh, what kind of snakes are these? They're, they're beautiful in them. Oh yeah, they're green bush rat snakes. But check out these isopods, because I just love watching them doing what they're doing, and they got these tunnels and everything in it. Like, I've turned into the biggest nerd ever now. But
isn't that wild?
But it's great. It's freaking great, So that's what I mean is colubrids they're always going to be my love when it comes to reptiles as a whole. But I have an extreme appreciation across the board, for all of them. So it's just a great piece for me.
What are your top 3 colubrids?
That's a hard question. And I'm going to answer it in a couple different ways. Okay. I will say this. If I had to sell everything and I had one snake from here on out in my home, this is the only species that I'm ever going to get to touch again. It's going to be an Eastern black king snake for sure. Because there's nothing that I have more history with than that. Well, I guess that's not an accurate statement. It was the first snake I ever caught. It has always been the pinnacle of my local finds. Like if I'm out herping anywhere in this area, that's the best thing I can find is that Eastern black king. I just love them, love them, love them. The second is a black rat snake. And that's probably the one I have the most history with because those I have always, that was my second snake. And that first king snake only lasted a few days. It bit me. I panicked, threw it, and then cried because I couldn't find it. But a black rat snake was the first snake that I actually had for a long period of time. And those are the most, I say black, now they're grays in this area because the taxonomic shifts, don't get me started. But black rat snakes have always been, with me and all the different morphs. And, I've kind of become known as the black rat guy. That is probably the most important species to me, as far as how much we've worked with it. And, again, that longevity. So those two are the primaries, right there. The third is that's where it really gets tough because it's probably going to be an Asian species. To narrow that down would be really, because mandarins are beautiful, but bamboos are so easy and fun to work with and they're pretty. So that one's going to be difficult. So that's one way that I would answer that. But now I'm going to answer it the way that I usually do. And that is, if you are really, really into colubrids, it's very hard to say what your favorite is. The most accurate answer you can give is, here's what I'm really into right now. And it's not that you lose interest in one or the other. It's something new catches your eye. And it's like, I want to try those. And then you really get into something because you find you love it. Right now, it's Alterna, gray banded king snakes. I have probably purchased 120 in the last 2 years. At least, it's become the ongoing joke on CCR, and it's my team roll. Just today, right before I hopped on this with you, Corey, who runs the nursery and is now moved into the curator for the collection, I said, I'm going to have a project for you today. I want us to go through and update our gray banded king snake room, making sure that we have that my spreadsheet is up to date, that there's not been any that have perished or there's not been any that we've added into that room that's not listed. And I need you to do the same thing in the holdbacks, because once I have this list and I know it's updated, then I can look at all these gray bands that I have pictures for that are ready to be sold and decide, do I need to keep that one? Do I need to keep that one? Okay, I can let that one go. Okay, I said, so once you do this, I can probably get some of these snakes out of your nursery and you don't have to keep taking care of them. So, but yeah, they're definitely my addiction right now. I am just in love with Alterna.
Now, are you like full blown, like into pure localities? Or you're just doing localities?
That's all I'm keeping. Like there are times where there are, like if I have a female that I don't have a locality, the same locality male, yeah, I'm going to put another male to her and they're going to be sold as non-locality, animals. They're going to be represented properly. There's also times that, obviously at the size that we are now, I can't produce everything, so I do have to purchase animals to resell. Now with us, when we do that, they go through an entire quarantine procedure with us. Basically, we go through, it's a minimum of 30 days in quarantine. We treat everything for mites, whether we think they have them or not.
How are colubrids more sensitive to mite treatments? Like walk me through what your mite treatment is for colubrids.
Certain species, yes. It's going to kind of depend on if it's a species that I have had a bad experience with on certain chemicals. But we hit with, if we don't think there's mites, we're hitting with like prevenamite, and it goes, and that's, the paper is changed at least once a week, whether it gets soiled or not, because I just want to continue to update with that treated paper. And if we see a mite at that point, in order for something to clear quarantine from just the mite treatment, there has to be a minimum of 30 days from the last time a mite has been seen. That's our minimum before we'll ever let it move forward. And usually it goes even longer than that. But there's other chemicals that we'll utilize because mites aren't a one and done anymore. Because it's funny, like if you get something wild caught in that has mites, you're going to be able to knock those mites out easy. Cake. The problem is whenever you have something that has been in, when I say been in captivity, captive born, been in captive collections, no wild caught anything, just has mites because it's coming from a captive collection that had them. A lot of these mites have already been exposed to chemicals through generations, and those don't work on them anymore. So there's times that we have to shift to different things to find what works on this lineage of mite that has come in on this animal. Jeez. And so, it can get, and that's why we do the quarantine process, because it's, if we are fighting one that's a tough one, I want to fight it on one animal. I don't want to fight it on a bunch of animals. So that's why it's, kept so separate. There's something that we're looking at to now, and it's utilizing NexGard, the chewables, because they don't have it in a different form in the US yet. But basically, instead of you treating with chemical on the outside, it's something that they're going to ingest. And then as soon as that mite takes a blood meal, kills it. So, and if you treat things like that, you're going to wipe them out. There's nothing they can do. They can't take a meal then without dying. And that's had some tremendous results overseas, and we're looking at doing the same thing here. So,
yeah, I've heard of that, and I actually have friends that have done it. Use NexGard. They've had it compounded for neonates, and it seems really promising. And it would be super cool if they would just market that towards snake keepers and just do it in a small dose and give you instructions to pack it inside of your feeder's mouth or whatever, and feed the feeder, and and then there you go. You've treated for 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever until you've busted the problem out. Especially with so many people keeping on in bioactive setups, you're then making it to where you don't have to nuke, all your isopods and springtails and, everything else and kill everything,
Well, and it's, a lot of these chemicals, it's kind of nervous on what the long-term effects really are. We can see when it causes a neurological effect immediately, or within a day or so. You'll see that if you've done it too much or it's not aerated enough or, something like that. But it's, what are the long-term effects in the lungs, different things like that, and that we don't necessarily see it. There could be something that 4 years down the road, that snake just dies. You don't know why, that we see that happen, where it could have been because of this treatment, 4 years ago. And now it's finally taken over and destroyed whatever it was going to do. So, yeah, I think that NexGard is very, very promising. I'm hoping that it moves in a direction where it's more streamlined for the reptile community here in the US, because I think that it would go a long way, where for us, the way it would be utilized here is every new animal in the facility would be treated with it. Yeah. Again, whether we think it needs it or not, because that way we know we're never going to have to deal with that as a problem. So, but
so I had always been curious if that, because like I said, I've known people that have used it on boas and pythons, both in Australia and here. And I think Dan Maliri has done it as well.
He has. Yep. Just talked to him a couple nights ago.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. And And so, I was curious if it was something safe for colubrids as well. That's good to hear.
I think it's going to be more of you have to get the dose right for the weight. If you're talking about small snakes, that's where it's going to get real tight, so the bigger snakes just like you're talking about bigger aquariums, or easier to take care of. It's because you can make more mistakes and not kill
Exactly.
things. When you have more gallons of water to dilute it. Same thing with a big snake. You've got, more weight and blood there to dilute your mistake, where these small guys
Yeah.
may not be able to handle it.
Yeah, but it's promising. It's exciting, to see these, potentially easier treatments rather than, I got to pull everything down and throw out, whatever, $600 worth of bedding and, treat all my cages and yeah.
It's a nightmare. And I say the best thing that can happen to a reptile keeper is for them to get mites when they have about 8 to 10 animals. And I say it because until you get mites, you don't think that it's really a problem for you. I don't have to worry about it. It's not going to happen. You don't take the right precautions. You don't do the quarantining. You don't do the treatments, things like that. If it happens and you only have one animal, it's not that hard to deal with. But when you have to go through and dump all your bedding from all 10 enclosures, treating all 10 of them for, a month or more, fighting all that stuff you had to throw away or, replace, whatever, it makes you then go, I don't want to do that again. So it's like you almost need that to happen to you once to really put those procedures in place to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah. So like if you have a person, a brand new keeper that's buying, let's say, well, not brand new, let's say they have 2 snakes at their house that they've had for a while and they're getting a new snake from you. Do you guys recommend a quarantine procedure for anybody?
For yeah, always. I mean, even if we're getting it where even if I'm fully confident that the animal is 100% fine, I don't care where you get it. You should quarantine just in case. I mean, because anything can happen, even if it's from Metazotics, anything can happen. I mean, you can have, mites are just the easiest to identify. There can be something dormant in that animal that has never popped up until it's got the stress of being transferred to your home. And it's in no way am I going to look at our facility and think, we are too good to have something bad in any of those animals. Oh, bullshit. It's absolutely, when you've got 700 breeders and roughly 1,000 to 1,200 babies, somebody back there has something wrong with them. You know what I mean? It's not showing. And, while we do testing and things like that, we've not had anything pop, but I'm never going to be surprised when something does. Because that's part of this. And that's where I think we all need to be a little bit more realistic about, the industry we're in, more realistic about just the way these things work. And it doesn't make people bad keepers if they're dealing with something like that. It means it was their turn, as bad as that sounds, because if you're going to have and I don't mean numbers like what we have, if you're going to have 20 animals, there's a good chance that there's something there. And that's where when we have snakes that just die, we all say, yeah, it happens, it happens. It died for a reason. Something caused that death. We just may not know what that was and haven't sent it to get a necropsy to fully figure out what that is. But there's something that caused that death. And that's just the reality of it. And we have to be honest. So yes, to your question, even if you purchase from Metazotics or any of, big names that are out there, quarantine just in case, just in case.
So I kind of derailed you there. I mean, we kind of went on the mite tangent and honestly, like you said, like mites are sort of the best case scenario. Like if you're going to find something and identify something during quarantine, mites would be the best thing, right? Because
absolutely.
Like what do you do if you end up, finding out that your animal has crypto, or something like that? Like, can you kind of talk to me a little bit about crypto and like, have you ever had that show up in an animal in quarantine? And then how do you handle that?
So I thought we were going to, because this was 2 years ago. Because we had multiple quarantine rooms. And in one of our rooms, we were having significant death, more so than what you would expect because again, when you have those numbers, there's going to be some, But we were running at a higher percentage because really 3% is where I think is average. Over the years of having 100 plus, snakes in the collection, I usually see about 3% die when it comes to colubrids. Boas and pythons don't have nearly that type of rate, but colubrids, with their metabolisms being so much faster, things run through them faster, and you'll see, that. So when I say 3%, it's people are, you may think, but 3 snakes out of 100.
Yeah.
In the course of a year. That's more the collection. Babies, I don't count those because you are going to have the failure to thrives and all that. But we were having a higher percentage in this room, and I couldn't explain it. We weren't having the crypto symptoms. So we weren't having like the swell. We weren't having regurgitations. And I'm stumped, at this point. And so I send an animal out for necropsy, expecting that there could be crypto, that's probably what it is. Just probably the form that's more, because out of the 2 forms, one of them causes the swell. The other one doesn't necessarily do that. And so I'm thinking, okay, it's probably this form. I think that's what we're dealing with back here. And no, there's no signs of crypto even during the necropsy. And they couldn't give me an answer on what it was, that caused this animal to perish. So I decided, okay, any animal that is showing us, less than stellar health in this room, I told Steve, who was our curator back there at the time, I go, hit him with, I want to hit him with antibiotics and with any antiparasitics, and let's see what, because at this point, what can it hurt? I hate to say it like that, but it's like, we've tried to be told what's going on and what to do. The vets haven't been able to help us, on this. And whenever we see a snake that starts taking, a little lethargic or something like that, they're not recovering, in this room. So we hit him with it. Everybody got better. It seemed to have fixed whatever it was. And so that told me it's not crypto, because that wouldn't have fixed it. Certainly wasn't then. And all of the testing that we sent out, everything came back negative, not just on that one species. Because what I threw at it was I tested 10 animals at the same time. And I did that because I thought, I know we can get negatives on a positive snake. But if that's what's in this room and I hit 10 animals at the same time, certainly one of them will be shedding it, if they got it. Nothing. So again, I thought I was dealing with it. And if if it would have popped, then we would have been putting animals down, unfortunately, and spending a lot of money to continue retesting to see what was salvageable and what wasn't. But didn't have it, in that situation. There's times where, because we don't test everything that comes in, and I'm not going to pretend that we do. It's not financially feasible to do it, unfortunately. What we do with our process, the animals come in, and we're usually getting these animals from, captive bred, reputable sources for the, most part. We will get wild caught every now and then on some of the very obscure things. But we'll get these animals in. They have a very minimum of 30-day quarantine where we're treating for mites. We are making sure that they're feeding, obviously. And then we're monitoring stools and body weight and just overall condition. Because if the stools look off, if something doesn't look quite right, we're going to test it. We're going to send it out. If we're seeing, if there's any regurgitations, if there's anything whatsoever that signals there might be an issue, we start doing the testing, or we start doing some of the fecals we can run here to check for parasites. Really? Now, we can't check for crypto, obviously, things like that. It's going to get sent out, but we can check for pinworms. We can check for stuff like that. And if we find it, we treat for it, with medications that we have on hand. It doesn't happen that often, to be honest, because again, we're typically using captive bred animals, for the most part. So we kind of go case by case. So like I said, minimum of 30 days. It's usually closer to 60 before they move out of quarantine, for 2 reasons. One, we certainly don't want to send something that has a problem to a customer. But we also, if it's a baby, it's going to get moved to our nursery. We don't want to move something to our nursery that's carrying anything with it. So we're very cautious on that too. But like I said, I'm not saying that it can't happen. It certainly can. And so you have to, you're trusting in the other individuals to have done what they can to ensure that they're not sending anything bad, but you have to do it on your end too, because things slip through, undetected. So.
And kind of going back to the Alterna, what do you think that's drawing you to Alterna? Is it the variance in their pattern? Is it the pattern itself and how insanely drop dead gorgeous it is? Or is the fact that they're kind of a challenge in regards to reproduction and getting started, right? Is that something that kind of attracts you to them? Is sort of that difficulty?
They check so many boxes for me.
Yeah.
So from a keeping standpoint, from the little kid in me standpoint, and I'll talk about that, to the business standpoint, they check so many boxes. First off, they pass the grandma test. And the grandma test is, if you have a grandma walking past a table that knows nothing about snakes, doesn't recognize morphs, doesn't recognize value, nothing like that, just what this animal looks like, they're going to look at a gray-banded king snake and say, that's a pretty snake. So it checks the grandma test right there. And that means that particular animal will hold a business value for time. I mean, it's going to it's not going to go away. It's always going to be beautiful, and anything that's beautiful is always going to have a market. So it passed that test. Number two, I loved gray bands even when I was younger, but I failed with them. And I failed because I didn't have access to, one, all of the information that we do now, and two, the feeder resources that I do now. Meaning to be able to get lizards, to be able to get the scents that I need to get them over on to pinks. I now have all that at my disposal where I didn't when I was young, when I was a kid. And so I'm getting to now go back and fix my errors in the past and do something special with them. And there's so much more access to them. Being in Indiana, if you saw an Alterna, you saw like one in 3 years at a show, so now it's like, that's why I gobble them up every time I see them. I want them all. Zach's like, you already have Alterna. I don't have these Alterna. You know what I mean? But so I get to kind of relive that and fix those mistakes. To your point, the babies can be a challenge, but they're not so much of a challenge that they can't be won. That you can't do it. And the good part about that is, again, I go back from a business standpoint, they're a challenge enough that you don't see them everywhere because other people don't have access to what they need, or they've struggled with them and moved past. But if you put the effort into it, there's such a good market for them. And I mean, especially where I live in the Midwest, I'm usually the only one with them on my table. And I sell out of them extremely quick, especially because they are locality specific for the most part. So it really does. And to your point, the variability in their patterns and the coloration and all that. And I used to just love like the Blair's phase, but now it's like, okay, I can have one that's almost a Blair's phase, but instead of orange, it's red saddles. And then, okay, no red, no orange whatsoever. That slate gray with black and charcoal is beautiful. So I've come to appreciate all of them, and I get excited because I never know really what they're going to hatch out looking like. Maybe this one's going to have a black head. Maybe this one's not. And on top of that, they only get 3 foot long.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have an incredible amount of space for them. It makes it a snake that it's easy to even offer to someone as a first pet, because as long as you've got them on rodents, they're not hard to take care of at all. You just follow these steps and you're good to go. You don't have to have a massive enclosure They're not going to go on and off feed like a ball python will. They're pretty chill, so they're not like they're not as squirmy as a corn snake. They're not as bitey as rat snakes. I mean, so there's just a whole lot of pluses, around them, and they're just underrepresented right now. And I'm okay with that because I will be the guy. I mean,
you're going to be
I will make them very represented. So.
There's a locality that I absolutely love. It's a highway locality.
277.
That's got to be what it is. That has to be what it is.
Yeah, probably 277.
Can you kind of walk me through how you would tell somebody to set up a gray banded king if somebody was in your store? Like, let's say it's like a 12-year-old kid and they're there with their grandma and it passed the test. Like, what are you gonna recommend for a long-term setup?
Yeah, if you're going to set up a gray banded king snake as a one individual setup, right? Because we can go into rack systems if we needed to, but let's go with, just a habitat. As far as size, like an Exoterra 36 by 18 by 18 is going to be plenty for these guys. And what you're able to do with that is while you can set it up with branches and things like that, that's not really what they use in the wild. Instead, you can set it with layers of like rocks because they like to go into the crevices and things like that. And so that's kind of what you can do with your background. As far as substrate, it depends on how natural you want to go. If you want to go with ease of cleaning and ensure that it's still low humidity, which is better for them, you can go with shredded aspen. That's what we would utilize when we were keeping them in racks. And that's going to be just fine for them. What we've gone to now since we've moved our gray bands from racks into caging systems, we do a soil sand mixture, about 50-50.
Interesting.
And that way it still dries out their feces very quickly because I prefer to do that to eliminate as many of the forward flies as possible. It does. And it's a very aerated cage. That's what's very important to me because we keep these in what we call our Southwest room. And it's our room where these species do better with low humidity. We're almost to the point I'll be putting in a dehumidifier in that room to help out even more. But again, go ahead.
What's your target humidity for them?
As little as possible. That's
really
because where they come from, they don't have as far as the species that we keep in there, they can handle humidity higher than the others because we keep like rosy boas, subox, Baird's rats, things like that really want it even lower. But like the subox and gray bands, they are going to overlap in range through some of their ranges as well. But where we're at, our base humidity is at least 40%, and between 40 and 60. It's just
same here.
Walking around, and I live right off Evansville is right off the Ohio River. So, there's plenty of humidity in our area. So I just want to try to drop that down to, if I can get it even to 20%, I feel that we're doing better.
Wow.
And so the aerated cages are plenty for gray bands. Like I wouldn't try to zap out any more for them, but I would try to take some more out of the room for the rosies and for the subox. They're a little more susceptible to humidity than what the gray bands are.
Okay.
But that soil sand mixture does great for us. We give them hide boxes. I will give them a humid hide. You want to provide that as well. And my thought process is if they're really wedging themselves into some of these crevices in these rock cuts, there's humidity in there. And so that is going to help them for their shedding needs and things like that. It's just their overall ambient. I prefer to keep that humidity a little lower. So 36, 18, 18, or even 36, 18, 12, if you really wanted to, is going to be plenty, but give them different levels and layers to be able to wedge and go. Give them a humid hide, give them about an 82 degree warm spot, in the 70s
so
on the other side.
Maybe like an Exoterra, like a 25 watt bulb or something, one of their intense bulbs.
Yeah. I would probably bump if it's an 18-inch high cage, then I'd probably bump that higher, probably a 75 watt on one side. Because again, I want them to be able to, if they want to go up to 84 degrees, great, but I want them to be able to choose, so it also will kind of depend on what your ambient temperature is in your room. Like you keep your place hotter than I keep mine. I'm a big guy, Adam. I can't go 80 degrees. That's not going to work for me, fella. So.
Well, I'm just warm blooded. I work outside in utilities, and being a Florida boy, I like it warm. And so, like I can get away. Almost all my cages have 25 watt bulbs on them, but they're PVC too, so they're insulated. They're still getting they're still getting like a 90 degree hot spot, because the house is 79 degrees. But damn it, does my wife complain?
Oh man, I wouldn't be able to sleep at your place, man. I'm the kind that I walk into a hotel and it's instant. At least 63. If it'll go lower, I'll take it lower.
Oh my God, I want to see
my breath when I sleep, man.
Yeah, see, well, and we run the AC at night, so our house drops to like 71 at night. But yeah, we had some cold nights here just a few days ago, and it got down to like 34 outside, and the house temperature dropped down to like 68. My wife is like turning the heat up. Then, I think we're just never happy, Yep.
Nope. I know how it is. Yeah. I get complaints all the time because of how cold I want to keep the house. And it's like, hey, you can put more on. I can only take so much off. You know what I mean?
So what about UVB? Do you advocate for UVB?
I absolutely do. And in no way can I pretend that we have it on all of our animals. No. Sure. As far as all the snakes, we're not there yet. And I don't know if we'll ever be fully there because it's going to take a massive facility to pull something like that off. However, I do fully, and that's one of the beauties, just the beautiful thing about being a part of CCR is what that, people talk about what like that show does for them. I don't know if everyone realized what it does for me and Zach, because we're learning as much as, we're putting out there. We're getting these experts on, and it has changed our thoughts on keeping, over the past few years. And that's a big one for me is I fully believe that everything to a degree benefits from UVB, some more so than others. Some it's an absolute need. And while, yes, we can say they don't need it, well, they may not need it, but it doesn't mean that they don't do better with it, and we don't have blood studies done on every species. We don't have all the, internal workings to know what's happening when they're getting it and what's happening when they're not. So yes, I believe that UVB, I've seen what it does for some. Like I put it on greenbush rat snakes. I put it on rhino rat snakes, and range rat snakes, all my greens. And my thought is because these species spend so much time in bushes and trees and all that, and they're very diurnal, in their activities, that they are getting UVB absorption, in the wild. And sure enough, I think their greens look better. They're more vibrant, after being exposed to UVB for a period of time. Their behaviors, they act a little different. So I think that it's certainly going to affect some species more than others, but it's something that I feel that's one of the next steps in our hobby. I think there's 2 steps that we're moving towards, and UVB is going to be the first one. And that's UVB usage and studies for snakes. We know what it's doing for a lot of the lizard species, but with snakes, that's going to be the next step. After that, we're flirting with it right now, but after that, and we may be 10 years from it, but alternative feeders and varied diet with snakes. Again, we know a varied diet when it comes to lizards and monitors and things like that is important, but right now we're still on mice and rats, only for the majority of snakes. And I think that that's going to be the next step after UVB solidifies, is, okay, now what can we do with varied diet, and how important is it, and what does it do for the long-term health and the longevity and reproduction and everything. So, but yeah, I know I kind of took that on a further tangent, but to answer your question, yeah, we do keep it on some of the snakes that we've been able to move into caging systems so far. On the rack systems, of course, we can't. However, Vision Racks makes a system now where you can put lights in your rack system because it's
That's
got a
awesome.
grated top. So you
Yeah.
could put some UV. You're not going to get as much through there because it's a pretty thick grate, but you could get some UV put through there if you wanted to work it that way. So I think that there'll be some rack systems that come out in the next 15 to 20 years that will incorporate that, because the hobby is going more to naturalistic keeping, and it's wanting more space and it's wanting more access to these things, but people still want to be able to keep a good number of reptiles. We're rarely a one or two reptile keeping group. We want
Sure.
as many as our room can hold. So I think that some of these companies will find ways to incorporate all of those ideas to where you can still keep a good number in a smaller amount of space, not small caging, but smaller overall footprint in your room, and still provide these levels of care with lighting, aeration, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, one of the big pushes I think we're sort of in the midst of right now is just giving more space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Giving more room to the animals. And I mean, for me, it's yeah, I have like 25 snakes and they're all in larger enclosures, and they all have UVB, with the exception of grow outs. I still use racks and tubs
Mm-hmm.
for grow outs. I'm not going to sacrifice security for my own pleasure of being able to view the animal and watch the behaviors that I enjoy observing and everything. I think that there is like a balance to be had there, and nuance that there is, small snakes, baby snakes like security.
Yep.
I'm not saying that it can't be done. And you're always going to have the person that says, I threw it right in a 4x2x2 and it did great. And that's great for you. But if I have 10 little snakes and I want them all to eat and feel secure and not regurgitate, and, I'm going to keep them in a smaller area where they just feel safer.
So I got two things I'll say there. One, you said 4x2x2, and that a 4x2x2 cage, it's kind of become a joke to me because it's amazing how many species that's the now minimum requirement, right? 4x2x2, 4x2x2. And isn't it awful coincidental that PV sheets come in 4x8 sheets? So how perfect this aligns, And so I just, it's like, you got to kind of come on. I'm all about giving bigger. Don't get me wrong, but that's not a cookie cutter dimension for every species, across. It's, some of them are going to be fine in a 36. Some of them, I think there's a lot in, for example, even bearded dragons. I don't think they need 2 feet of height. 18 seems to be just fine when I'm working with them. When I've given them that extra 6 inches, they don't use it. They don't care.
Yeah.
So there's just little things like that I think that there's a big difference between experienced information and regurgitated information.
Yeah.
And it's what happens with some of this is someone wants to write a care sheet or put a page on their website. And so they do a little research, do a little Google. They find this other care sheet. Oh, it says 4x2 is the minimum. So now I put 4x2 as the minimum on my care sheet. And then there's someone else who wants to write a care sheet. So they Google, they find these 2 sites that say 4x2. And then it becomes, there's 20 sites that tell you 4x2 for this animal that all came from one person, that it's just been, now it's, no, all these people say it. No, none of them have ever kept this animal like that. They all have this one guy that said it. And again, I'm not necessarily, it's bad information. It's just understanding how this really happens and why that's so prevalent. It's just like sand is bad for bearded dragons. They live on sand in the wild. No, it's not. You know, where that came from was outdated information. When we first kept these, we weren't giving them UVB. We weren't feeding them the proper things. We didn't have their temperatures right. So if they ingested a little sand, they got impacted because they couldn't digest anything regularly. And so, that happened. But once husbandry improved and we understood their needs and they're properly hydrated because they're getting the right vegetables, they're able to digest properly because they have the proper basking temps, they have UVB, they will pass that. You know, it's normal. So, but again, it's outdated information that has just kept on for years from one care sheet to another. So anytime I hear 4x2x2, I can't help but think 4x8 sheet. There it is.
It's a grand conspiracy by the PVC cage makers.
It's funny to me. I'll tell you, the other thing I would say is that we all also have to understand that someone coming into the hobby now, while we certainly don't want to beat anybody up with, you need to have the biggest and the best right off the bat, anything like that. No, don't do that. But coming in, you do have the opportunity to do things at a level that is higher than what someone was doing 30 years ago. You've got the information, you've got the cages that are available, you've got all the products that are available. And so you get to start off doing it in this other way, right? And you build your room in that manner. But at the same time, we don't want to take shots at the individuals who do have hundreds of animals who have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years and expect them to be able to go in and change the caging for 300, 400 animals. Can you imagine the cost, that's going to take? And also understand that if some of these individuals who have these very large collections went in and said, okay, everything's going to go in 4x2s now, with all the lighting, fantastic. They're also going to have to reduce the 400 animals they have down to about 70, okay, or even 60, right? And when that happens, the care is it's elevated. Not to say something was wrong with the rack system, but it's elevated because they're getting, exposed to more, all these other things. But what happens to the hobby when that happens? When all of these breeders who have these babies that are going into the market to help grow the hobby and have these animals available for so many others, if they suddenly drop their collections down to 20% of what they are now, so many species just kind of go away. Or they're there, but there's only 40 of them available in the United States that year instead of 400 that year. And I don't mean that as in these animals have to be kept in poor conditions in order to feed the hobby. No. Not saying that at all. Saying that what we have accepted as okay for so long, let's don't demonize it with having this new information. It's okay. Now that we have the new information, as is available, let's upgrade, but understand where the balance has to be in order for the hobby to actually continue to grow for those that want to put them in the big cages and set it like that. It's all fine in the balance and walking that line and really stepping, up to 10,000 feet and looking down and understanding how it all has to play out to really make sense. I mean, I'm one of these guys where, I want to give the absolute best care we can, but I know I can't put everything in a 4-foot cage and survive as a business for sure. Not until we have a much bigger facility to be able to do something that with. So
is that a transition you see yourself making? Are you doing that actively as time goes on, moving towards more enclosures with more space?
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, we just did it with the Southwest room. Now like things like, okay, ball pythons, they're going to stay in racks. They do better in racks, in my experience. That is a species that even though it's bigger than a gray banded king snake, they just tend to feed better, breed better. They do so much better with that privacy. So those will probably stay in racks for us. We may move to some larger rack systems, for some of the bigger ones, but that species will stay like that. The gray bands, that the Southwest room, we revamped. It currently has 2 racks left in it because I haven't got them out of there yet. And because I mean, again, the cages take up a lot more space, and we're only talking, we're not talking real large cages for the gray bands, but I mean, I can keep maybe 20% of the animals that I could have kept in there before by doing it this way. But yes, we've updated it. And there's some we already keep in cages, some of our big beauties, our Chinese king rats, things like that. And room by room, I'm going through and we're upgrading where we can. I'm having to do a lot of measuring, what can I fit, in this? If this rack is pulled out, okay, that's 30 animals. I can only get 15, in this spot. What am I going to do with the other 15? Are we going to cohab in these, or, what do we want to do to try to still elevate it? And it's things like the black rat snakes where I'm like, you know what? It's time to get these out of racks. We're talking 6 foot big active snakes. They don't need to be in a rack system. They need to be in cages. Let's figure out how to make it work. And so we're steadily going through that bit by bit.
It's one of the biggest things that I wish that that both sides like we're one hobby, right? But there's always 2 different sides and opposing arguments and things like that. But I wish that everybody could just kind of come together and live and let live. That some people are going to keep in racks and you can keep in racks and tubs and have that tub be a large tub that might even actually give more space to the animal than if you were to keep in a smaller enclosure.
Yep.
Right. And there are the people that are focused on breeding and not so much watching their animal and observing behavior, and breeding is the number one priority. And that's kind of what, maybe it's not what got them into the hobby 30 years ago, but it's what's kept them in it, and kept them successful in it. And just giving everybody the space that they need to be able to, keep in a humane fashion. And, and it is funny with the 4x2x2s because, you look at a care guide and it says, keep a ball python in a 4x2x2 and also a spotted python. And you're like, that there's such a difference in mass there,
Yep. 100%.
And and I have 3x2 by 1.5 enclosures that I keep my spotted pythons in, and they have more than enough room in there to cruise and fully sprawl out and bask and hide and everything.
Yeah. And it comes to it's not just the species size, but it's what are their behaviors, that kind of dictate the room that they utilize is what, a blue beauty that could be up to a 12-foot snake and you'd never know it. Because they don't really stretch out like that. Now, giving them good space is awesome and should be. A friend from Exoterra, I know he's got a big 10 foot by 10 foot by 10 foot tent.
Oh yeah. Logan.
Exactly.
Watching his stories are just incredible.
Yes. Logan's a great guy. And he
is.
And I think one of the things he said to me goes, the coolest thing about walking in there is knowing there's this 10 foot, 12 foot snake and you have to find it. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, that's what I mean is even a snake that long, it doesn't have to have that 10 foot by 10 foot by 10 foot, spot. And so, but some are going to be much more active than others. A false water cobra that does not get as big as a blue beauty probably needs a bigger cage than a blue beauty because that thing's all over the place, So it's just they're judging off that as well as their size.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like my indigos. I'm trying to plan long-term. What am I going to give them? What are they going to need? Like getting to know the animals too. And, figuring out their behavior. And at some point they're probably going to have to be in a 6 foot long by maybe 2.5 wide enclosure might, be good. And maybe, 2 feet of height and, and it's interesting. Like you said about the bearded dragons with 18 inches of height, it may actually be better from an energy perspective too.
It is 100%.
Because you don't need a high of a wattage. Exactly. If you're using a 2 foot tall enclosure for a terrestrial animal that isn't going to utilize this extra 6 inches of head space there, it's like, why not bring the light down closer to the basking area.
Yep.
The animal's going to digest better. You know, it's kind of a win-win. You have to look at it from a logical perspective, and that's the other thing too that drives me crazy is that then when you have these keepers that are really trying to do the very, very best for the animal, and they have an animal that isn't feeding or something's going wrong, something is not right, and it is the size of the enclosure, then they beat themselves up and they think that they're a horrible person because they're not knocking it out of the park, you know, and then they feel bad when they have to keep in a smaller enclosure, but sometimes that's what the animal needs. And you have to look at it from an individual basis, right?
I have this conversation about non-feeding ball pythons at least 3 times a week. Just last night, you know, a regular came in, and that's the topic, because it's, you know, again, it's a 4x2x2, and this is like a 4-foot ball python. So it's that, you know, it jives, you know, it should work. Been off feed for about 3 or 4 months. I'm like, okay, I'm going to need you to put it in the magic box. And that's, you know, put that thing in like a 28 to 48 quart sterilite, and that needs to be its home for the next few weeks, and then try to feed it in there. And you're probably going to see a big difference in it. And it's part of it, you know, it's understanding. And then you know, to go back to the bearded dragon thing, I'll tell you, so we have our local celebrity bearded dragon. He's probably the most popular reptile in our tri-state area. He goes to schools. The first time we have sold at least 300 of his offspring because
oh my God, what a stud.
No, I'm telling you, man, we, the first time people wanted his baby so bad, the first clutch that we had available, I finally had to just put a post out and say, we will have them individually photographed and become available at 7 p.m. on Friday, this date. And sure enough, when they went live, like 20 of them sold in under 4 minutes. And these were like $250 a piece, you know, it just boom, 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 boom. But anyways, he's on display here in the Chandler shop. In his enclosure, it's open. There's no top on it. It is, I think it's about 9 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet tall. Completely open, completely decked out. I mean, it's beautiful. And he's got his, you know, nice logs. He's got basking areas, all this. How much space do you think that dragon uses of that cage?
Oh, I bet you he stays within like a 2x2 square of that hot
He
spot.
stays in one spot, basking under his light all day. He only comes off that log for 2 reasons: food or females. That's it. Otherwise, he is right there. He's not utilizing any of that space whatsoever. I could cut that in a third and he wouldn't bat an eye. So, I mean, it's just again, understanding their behaviors. A baby beardy would be all over the place. But an adult, it's like us. Just give me my recliner, turn the TV on, I'm good. I don't really need to go anywhere else. So,
well, and then you go into a shop, and again, looking at these animals as individuals, you'll go into a shop and you see the bearded dragon in a 4x2x2 or whatever, and it's just pacing the glass, the whole 4 feet going back and forth, and that's like this horrible thing to see, because it's like this like insanity, you know, like there's claw marks the whole way up and down where they're just pacing. Like, what is causing that? Why is the animal doing that to where they like, is the heat not hot enough? Is it too hot? What is making them just want to get out of that box so bad?
Right. Yeah. Are they not being fed properly? Are there's any number of or is the UV, you know, not quite right? Can they not get out of it? You know what I mean? There's so many things that could be causing those kinds of behaviors, or it's even what they're seeing. You know, it's especially with a beardy, if they're catching sight of something they think's a rival, even if it can just look like a beardy, you know, they're going to get hype, you know? So sometimes them having all this vision of the room's not the best thing, you know, for them either. It's more stressful. So,
yeah, I mean, it all comes down to individual needs and preferences. And I mean, I have 2 boys. One of them wants to be outside from sun up to sundown. The other one would love to just chill on the couch for the entire day.
I've got the same 2.
It's wild.
Twins,
It's like, all right, these guys are the same species from the same genetic pool, yet they have totally different requirements, like completely different. The one is 100% homebody, wants to chill on the couch, watch TV all day long. The other one can't stand being inside. He'll run himself down until he's this crabby, exhausted monster, and just wants to keep going, It's wild. And I really, I can see that in my snakes as well. You can see the ones that, he if you were to give him a 1x1 enclosure, he would just, as long as he had that stick that he can sit on and that exact temperature, he'd be super happy. And then you've got the other one that cruises everywhere, and it's wild, the contrast. So let's talk about Colubrid Fest. I want to go to Colubrid Fest. I'm now that I'm an official member of the cool kids, now that I have my indigos. What brought that on, and especially at the level that it's at, because there's a lot of fests that go on, and you guys have like a pretty wild one.
Well, it was funny. It started with a misunderstanding is how it actually came about. So, on one of the episodes of CCR, it was mentioned that we had gotten messages that you guys should do a Colubrid Fest. And Zach said, we should do that. We should put together a Colubrid Fest. Now, what Zach meant was something like Carpet Fest. And I thought I understood what that was, but it comes to, we've come to learn I didn't. Because again, my entire background is big, make it bigger, grow it, make it everything it can be. And so when I hear the word fest, that's big. You got to make this big. It's got to be powerful.
That's short for festival.
Exactly. Well, Zach wanted a barbecue. He thought it was just going to be a gathering of a few people, have a barbecue, hang out, have a few drinks. That's it. But when I heard fest, it's like, okay, if we're going to do this, what has it got to, what would be CCR's goals with this? And, we obviously always want there to be education. We want to build the community. And that's really, it's to sum up what Colubrid Fest is now, and the whole goal is uniting and growing the community. That's it. That's what it encompasses. Everything we do is to feed that goal. So what we ended up designing, and I guess I say I designed this and then threw it at Zach. Like I thought we were on the same page, and we're recording an episode, and Colubrid Fest is mentioned. I go, yeah, we're going to, and I just laid this whole thing out on what Colubrid Fest was going to be. And Zach, luckily this wasn't a video episode yet. We weren't there. This was still just audio, but I can see Zach, and he's just kind of, just dumbfounded face, like what? And then he just goes with it, and we talk. But he calls me immediately afterwards. He's like, "I want to talk about Colubrid Fest." He's like, "I thought this was going to be a barbecue," and I'm like, "Oh, you want barbecue? You want us to have barbecue there?" No. I thought it was just going to be like a small group of people having a barbecue. And I'm like, "Oh no, not us." But to his credit, he immediately jumped in and was all for it. But so the way Colubrid Fest, is mapped out. First, there's Friday. Most people are coming in on Fridays. Vendors are coming in on Fridays. VIPs are coming in on Friday. And the vendors set up, but they don't have sales. We may have an adjustment to that this year for like a 1 hour thing, but we may not. We'll see how that's going to go. But historically, there's no sales allowed on Friday. Instead, once everybody's set up, we have a mixer. And year one, this was our first nervous point, was if you have a room full of introverted people, you may have a whole lot of standing around staring at each other, So this could go bad. But it didn't, because the thing is everyone in that room has a shared passion, and probably one of the
Yeah.
biggest passions they have. And so everybody wants to talk about their animals. Everybody wants to hear about, the others in the projects. And that first year and then to the second, you could just hear the volume growing and growing, in those rooms. And it was, what we loved watching was, one, you would see people in there that had talked to one another for years online, but had never met in person. And so you could see the sheer joy of getting to meet these different individuals face to face and having these conversations. And, so it was going fantastic. But then here was the other part that I paid attention to, because one of my fears would be you would have separated groups, cliques, you know what I mean, that just kind of formed and stayed together. Because if you think about Daytona or Tinley or the big shows like that, yeah, you get to go and see a lot of your friends. But then what happens? This group goes off and does their thing. This group goes off and does their thing. It's not the whole show together, right? But that didn't happen. Instead, it's like every 15 minutes when I would scan the room again, all the groups had shifted. It was different people talking to different people, and everyone's laughing and having a good time. And it's some of the most introverted people that I knew were there, that, they're on the spectrum, love them to death. But we know they have a little trouble, in social settings. They're smiling. They're talking to everybody. People are talking to them. Everyone was included. And you're talking some big personalities, from who've been doing this for so long, just eating it up with everybody else, from I've had a snake for 2 months to this is my 50th year breeding. Everybody just melding so well. So that's day one. And it's a great time. Then we go into Saturday. Here's the other kicker. No sales on Saturday. And this is where it starts getting everyone a little nervous, especially the vendors. But there are no sales on Saturday for a few reasons. We have educational talks and presentations all day Saturday. But these aren't the kind of talks where you're just being talked at in boring lectures. No. We design the talks so that it applies to everyone. Like, we don't have any species specific conversations, because if somebody's going to talk about indigos, well, if you're someone who's never going to have the space for an indigo, has no desire to keep indigos, you don't really care about that talk. So we don't do that. Instead, it's going to be topical situations and things that really can apply to everybody, in keeping, and it keeps it interesting. The other thing that we do with these talks, they're only about 20 to 30 minutes. And in things like some other science symposiums and whatnot, there'll be a long talk, like an hour, which is hard to stay with, in many cases, unless you have a dynamite speaker. But it's an hour, and you might get 5 minutes for questions. That's not what we wanted. Instead, 20 to 30 minutes of talking, and then 30 to 40 minutes of group conversation. And what happens is, we initially thought, okay, this may be another pinch point if everyone's afraid to raise their hand and ask questions. But luckily, we already had something in case that happened, and that's Zach and I. We instantly go into podcast mode, and we start interviewing this person and firing questions. But we really don't have to do that. I mean, we have questions we want to ask after hearing it, but the room reacts. Everyone in the room started asking questions. But the beautiful thing about it is, the person that gave the presentation is not the only expert in the room. So you start getting this group conversation on other ideas and other ways to tackle these problems. And in that instance, you're getting this information from a group of people and from, more than one source. And there's no stepping on toes. Everyone left their egos at the door. It was all just, how can we be better at this particular piece? And one of the reasons we don't allow sales that day, 2 reasons for that. One, we didn't want people to have to pick and choose whether they wanted to go be out at a show buying animals or be in listening to this talk, because there's others that have tried that and it doesn't work. It fails. But the other point is by there not being sales allowed, all the vendors get to be in here participating. They don't have to stand behind their table and worry about sales and their bottom line. And I told them, this is the greatest gift I can give you, is you're going to get to go experience why you got into this in the first place and not worry about your dollars. I get to take that off the plate on Saturday. So they're in there, and think about it. These vendors are other experts. How much, information do we have in the minds of those people that would not be in the room if sales were taking place? So they're all in there. We go through, we have this great day of educational conversations and talks and presentations, some of which will blow your mind. I mean, it's wild. Then we have an auction that night. It's going to be auctions similar to what you would experience at Tinley or some of the other large shows, probably a little more PG than some of those, because we bring the kids. We're going to have fun. This is family oriented. All of the money that is raised goes to the CCR Conservation Corps. So it's our 501c3 conservation fund. And we do that because while we know nearly all auctions that take place in the reptile community are going towards USARK, and we support USARK, they're fighting against legislation. We feel we need to fight for conservation. There needs to be a balance that's going towards that. And that's what Zach and I, our CCR Conservation Fund does. Last year, we were able to raise, I think it was like $22,000 that night.
Holy shit.
For the Conservation Fund. It was a blast. I mean, it's so much fun. So after that, everybody retires or goes and does their thing. Then comes Sunday. And the reason that Sunday exists is because I knew if we wanted to get people there, we were only going to get a select few to come just to hear the talks. That was going to be minor in the grand scheme of things. If we really wanted to put rear ends in seats and grow this community, people had to have the opportunity to see animals and to acquire animals. And we had to get people in the door to do that. If you want vendors to continue to come, vendors have to be successful. If we are going to expect them to, pay for all the travel to get there and set up and, over the course of these few days. So it was all going to have to work in harmony, and you needed all these pieces to achieve that goal. So Sunday is the expo, and it's a colubrid only show. If there's a lizard in the building, it's a feeder. There's no geckos, there's no ball pythons, there's nothing else other than colubrids. Now, here's the difference. Don't expect some massive expo. It's not Tinley, it's not Pomona. You're not going to get that many tables. My pushback to that, though, is this. How many tables do you walk right past in an expo that you don't even stop to look at because as you glanced, it didn't have the species you're interested in, right?
Yeah.
If you like colubrids, you do not walk past a table in Colubrid Fest. Every table, it takes you a bit to get through because you are hardcore scanning every single table. There's going to be so many breeders that you want to stop and talk to, right then about the animals on the table. And one thing that we didn't anticipate, I didn't see this coming, but it made complete sense afterwards. Everyone that attends the multiple days, so all the VIPs, by the time we open the door for them to actually purchase, they are primed and ready to buy because they've been hearing all about this for 2 days. You know what I mean? It's all these stories, talking all these breeders, all this stuff. They are hype to go buy new animals. So they're going to buy. Now, the first year, every vendor crushed it. I mean, it was insane. I had vendors telling me, I've done more today than I've done in any Tinley I've ever set up at. I mean, that was an incredible compliment because it wasn't a packed show. It's not like that. Last year, not every vendor did as great. And it wasn't because it was necessary. Again, show attendance, we went to Fort Wayne. We weren't as happy out there. But it's what we notice in Kluberfest is VIPs, they're looking for the obscure. The biggest group, the hardcore group that comes, they're not necessarily after what they find at every show. They're not really after, corns and hognose. They were more after my green bush. I had 3 of them on the table at $600 a piece. They sold in the first 5 minutes of the show.
Wow.
Boom.
Jeez.
John Michaels did great with all his dry marking, and just, so stuff like that really, really moved fast. But we want all colubrid breeders to be there and to be successful. So this year we know that the VIPs will continue to grow, because I always tell everybody, I only have to convince you to come to Colubrid Fest once. Once you're there, you'll keep coming. I'm fully confident in that. But what we want to do this year is we want to ensure that we get more of the general public from the local area to attend, because the general public they're going to do more of the more common species. And so that's going to help every vendor be successful and help the overall event continue to grow at the rapid pace. This year, it's here. It's in my backyard. It's in Evansville, which means you have me on the ground to promote locally all year. So there definitely is going to be an even bigger turnout than what there's been the last 2 years. And it seems like everyone is pretty pumped and excited to do it. It's funny as it sounds, it's costing me a lot of money putting it here, because so we know, and we're excited about it, that with Colubrid Fest being in Evansville, Metazotics is going to get a lot of visitors, because both shops are literally 20 minutes in 2 different directions from where the venue is.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we're like, we're going to get a lot of visits, and that's going to be great. And we're looking forward to it. The inside of my shop, you've seen the pictures. We're very proud. We put a lot of work into keeping things, looking the way they do. The outside of this building looks like a turd. I mean, it's 2 colors of brown that I don't know what the previous owner was thinking. I'm embarrassed by the way that the color scheme looks out there. And so I'm like, okay. And so I start making calls. I've got bids, and I've already paid 50% down deposit. A 50% down deposit to have this entire 9,000 square foot building painted, which includes the roof, because it's a metal roof that's brown, and I got to get that painted too. So yeah. So basically I'm making sure that if the country is coming, that I'm, we're putting the best face on we can for everyone. And it's,
I know you're going to be busy, but if I come, I want a behind the scenes tour of,
I will do my very best, because I know everyone's going to say that same thing. So,
I can't imagine.
We're really looking forward. In fact, we're closed on Sundays, and I think we may have to open up for 2 hours that Sunday after the expo portion, because I don't know when anyone's going to have time to actually come visit the shop unless they come to town early on Friday, because Saturday is packed. I mean, we really pack it full. So trying to figure it out, because we want to make sure that everyone who wants to see it gets a chance to come in and see everything. So
now, what made you guys change venues? So
the first time we did it in Indianapolis, and the reason that we chose Indiana had nothing to do with the fact that I live in Indiana. It's simply the laws. 2 reasons. One is the laws. We needed a state that had favorable colubrid laws, meaning some states you can't do any natives whatsoever. In Indiana, you can do natives as long as they are a morph. You just can't do normals, which means no normal black rat snakes, no normal black racers, no normal bull snakes. Those are kind of your primary that, are taken off the list. But you can do any morph of those animals. So that,
do people keep black racers as pets?
No, I'm just thinking of what we might see. You know what I mean? What are the most predominant? Right. There's some garters as well and some Nerodia, but it doesn't really knock off too many things that you find in the pet trade.
Okay.
So, and they're also rear fang friendly, where it's, they have kind of these you can, these you can't. We can find out about any species. So you can do barons, you can do false water cobras, you can, you know what I mean? So most of the common rear boegas are all fine. And where other state, like if we did it in Kentucky right now, no rear fang, although we're working with the DNR to change that. So stay tuned.
Nice.
But that's one of the reasons Indiana made sense. But it also makes sense from a geographical standpoint, where it's literally called the crossroads of America because everything just kind of hits there.
Yeah.
And so it was easy for a lot of people to get to. And even if you're flying in, it's relatively inexpensive travel when coming to Indiana or staying in Indiana. So it all kind of made sense. So we did Indianapolis. Now, we did it downtown Indianapolis year one. Downtown was literally across the street from the Lucas Oil Stadium, and it was the same day as a Colts home game. It was horrible for parking. You'd have to pay $30 to park, walk over to it. When we were leaving, the Colts game was getting out. So, it's just, the city's great. I love Indianapolis, but that particular spot downtown didn't work. And we were having trouble finding a venue on the outskirts of Indianapolis because that's really what we prefer. And we really, really wanted a hotel convention center. But again, having trouble finding that. Well, the Show Me Show had a venue in Fort Wayne, Indiana, 2 hours north of Indianapolis. And they were already doing a show there. And it was a huge, nice venue. So we put it out there and asked, okay, if we move from Indianapolis to Fort Wayne, what does everyone think about that? We did that on a Facebook Klubertfest group. Everyone had the same response. We're coming anywhere you put it. Okay, that solves that. It is also much cheaper to go to that venue, which, Show Me pays for all this. Mickey Iyer and the Show Me team, he lost a lot of money year one because of how expensive the venue was, and he knew it. For Mickey, he doesn't care about making money with Klubertfest. He just wants to be a part of what we're doing because he believes in it so much.
That's awesome.
It is. It really is. So we went to Fort Wayne. We did it there. And we had it in our head that Fort Wayne was going to be the place going forward, every year. And we were just going to build around that. We didn't like the city as much, but, we'll do what we need to do here. Well, unfortunately, some snakes had gotten loose from a particular vendor. Not their fault. Accidents happen. But some file snakes had gotten loose, got into the walls of the building, died, stunk. They had to tear the wall out. So at that point, they said no more animals, and they wiped out Show Me's contract with them. So it sucks, but it could have happened to any of us. You know what I mean? So then it was, okay, where are we going to go? And we started looking at various cities in other states because we really did want to try to connect it on the outskirts of a big city. So it's easier for people to fly in and out of. Because it's like the Tinley mentality where Tinley's not big because Tinley's big. Everybody is coming to Tinley, and you have Chicago that makes it easy to fly in and out of. Well, Zach suggested Evansville. And I was really on the fence. Mickey was instantly like, yeah, that's great. What about Evansville? And I'm like, whoa, guys, hold on a second, because Evansville's not a big city like Indianapolis is, or Cincinnati is one that we were looking at, places like that. I love Evansville. It's got everything I need, but I'm like, is everybody who comes here, are they going to feel the same way? And then the more we talked about it, it did make sense. We still had the same laws. Evansville does have an airport. If people wanted to make a bigger trip out of this, we're 2.5 hours from Indianapolis. We're an hour and a half from Louisville, 2 hours from Nashville, 2.5 hours from St. Louis. You can go do anything if you want to make another drive. And then it's like, okay, you've got Metazotics that's located here. People are going to want to check that out. We do have a venue that is, it's economical. It's where reptile shows used to be held. It's got a hotel connected to it by a sky bridge that we're going to have a block for. So if you just want to park and never go anywhere, you don't have to. You can walk to your hotel from the sky bridge and, the venue, all that. So it did really have a lot of positives in knowing that I'm here to help promote it locally. And we have such a presence in the local community. We're working with the local show promoters here to be able to promote Klubertfest as well. So it should have a very, very nice local turnout in addition to all of the VIP that are flying in. So it all works. I think my hesitation was if for some reason it didn't go, and it's not like we don't think it's going to go well. It's just you always have this nervousness when we're so visible, right?
Yeah.
And my nervousness is if for some reason there's complaints about anything with Colubrid Fest this year, I felt like it was more on me because it's here when, that's not the right mentality to have. We will attack any issues just like we always have. But it's just funny because I know it continues to look like, well, Clint just wants it there because he's there. No, it was the opposite. I didn't want it here. So it was, I wasn't as comfortable with it, here. So, but yeah, that's why Indiana's has been the choice. And, but we certainly looked at others, and we don't want it to travel. That's another very important piece because people have suggested that, like, have it, on the East Coast this year, and then the West Coast, and then the Midwest, and then Florida. The problem is it goes against our goal. And our goal is uniting the community. And if we move it, the West Coast people are not going to come to the East Coast show because I'll wait till next year when it's on the West Coast, and vice versa. And then we're right back to the shows we already have, across the country. And it's not hitting what we're wanting to hit. We want to get everyone off of their phones and computers and into the same room enjoying each other. And I think that's how we solve a lot of the division and different camps that exist in the hobby as currently are.
And would this have happened if CCR never existed?
No.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. And neither one of us ever saw it, as a thing either. Zach and I, we truly love and enjoy each other. I mean, I don't think either one of us expected we're so different, but so similar at the same time. We overlap in so many things, but we clearly have walked very different paths, in life to where we're at. He has gone through this academic, path and it's brilliant for it. I've gone through this business path, and what we've learned along the way by combining these two worlds and the two philosophies that, we can entwine really make us capable of some great things together. And I love the man to death. I mean, we really do have a blast. I can't tell you how many times because it's not just two guys on a show. I mean, we're calling each other just to, let me tell you about the day I had, you know what I mean? Just to vent this or whatever, or bouncing ideas and all that. And so, no, I think what each of us have allowed the other one to do with this now is both of us really wanted to be able, even without voicing it, we wanted to be able to do something special, be a part of something special that's really giving to the community and doing something very, very positive in the community. And with Zach, he had the academic means to be able to do things with conservation and whatnot, but he didn't always have the funding. He didn't have, that business side that it takes to be able to generate the things, the resources needed. He would through the regular channels of grants and things like that. But as we've seen, grants can be swallowed up real quick and taken away, by the federal government just because someone decides they want to. And so there are things and there's also a lot of red tape that Zach has to deal with, in his environment. With me, I know how to generate resources. I know how to get funding. I know how to put relationships in place that get us where we need to go. But I don't necessarily have the connections on what to do with it once I've got it, where Zach has all that. And, he knows where we can place it. And he's got the backing. It's like I have all of the clout, I guess you would say, in the business world to get these companies to come in and help us, with our goals. Zach has all the clout in the academic world to then be able to take that and go do the right things with it. And, and people backing with it. And so it's by the two of us coming together, we were actually able to really move forward in something that, whether it's Colubrid Fest in building the unity or the conservation fund and being able to do great things with that, neither one of us, I think, would really be able to do those things if the other hadn't been a part of it. So it's really a testament to what can be done whenever you're collaborating, and have the same goals.
It's so interesting because you hear the word business and you think profit instantaneously, yet you're going out of your way to get money into conservation. And it's almost like, I don't know. So recently I had some merch made for the podcast with Justin Smith from Fulvius Apparel. And I told him, I'm like, I don't want any cut from the sales, and I'm working on something with cold-blooded caffeine too, but I'm not going to say anything.
Nice.
But I said, I was like, I don't want any cut from the sales. I want it to be donated to the Orient Society for Indigo Conservation. I'm like, that's what I want. That excites me so much more than money. And especially since like having two kids and having the animals and everything, it's really hard to cut out a portion of our monthly money to put towards conservation. And this is a way for me to do it where I don't have to think about it. And it's a positive thing, but also the reward too is that people are then participating in what I'm trying to do, and like, so I can see from where you're at, you have this business background and that does make people think profits and, driving sales and all that. Right. But then the fact that you're working this in such a way to help fund the world that Zach is in. I mean, that shows like your friendship, right? And that how much you care about him and his livelihood, but then how much you care about conservation and animals and research and, all this other stuff. It's such a cool thing. And the happy byproduct is the participation from the community, that they're being drawn to this thing together where they can learn and be better keepers and better people.
Yeah, it's basically, when I step back and think, what has been that constant in my life? You can think of different eras in your life and what you were into, or reptiles have been the constant, always. No matter, girls have come and gone, work has come and gone, and it's, video games have come and gone, whatever. But reptiles were always there. Reptiles have been the constant. And I think that we wanted to find a way to really leave a positive impact. And I think if we disappear today, I don't know if that impact is there yet. We still have work to do, a lot, and we are going to. I also feel that business, like, when we talked about business and it being profit driven, and that's how a lot of people just always think of it. I think that maybe that's part of what one of my goals are here, is to shift some of that mindset, that just because it's a business doesn't mean they're bad. I mean, it's every one of us has to make a living. Every one of us either owns a business or works for one. There's really no in between there. And I think that there are definitely good companies out there that they do they want to make a profit. They have to, or they don't stay in business, but doing it the right way. And I've always believed that consistency wins the long term. If you're shady in business, you may do very well for a little while, but it's going to catch up with you. But being consistently honest, showing integrity, at times it's going to hurt because you're going to miss sales or you're going to lose something because it was the right thing to do or say or not do. But long term, as I said in the very beginning, the right behaviors will lead to the right results. They always will. The market update that I give on CCR, I was nervous to do that in the beginning because I did feel I don't want the audience to just see me as nothing but business, or nothing but profits, and animals are only numbers to me, because it's not in any way. I mean, I left a position in which I was extremely comfortable. And my job was, it was easy because of how long I'd been doing it. It wasn't rough at all. And I walked away from all that to pay myself $12 an hour. I mean, that's all I pay myself. So it's I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for the puzzles. I'm in it for, winning, that success, of doing this thing. But it's funny because, again, back to the market update, I didn't want to be viewed like that, because you hear that so often. When someone in the hobby is successful financially, they start getting labeled. They're just in it for the money. And that's not fair. Some are, but that's not a fair label just because someone is succeeding. But here's the funny thing to me too. We're quick to say that an individual's in it for the money. But in the back of our heads, we're all like, I'd really love to be able to do this for a living. I mean,
yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm like, I know that people want to know this stuff. I know that, there's value in sharing these insights in this analysis and whatnot. I hope that it comes across the way that I'm intending. And from what I can tell, it has. I get people that stop me at shows and bring it up and things like that. And it's that balance. I wouldn't want to do the market update if we didn't have a science update coming with it. I wouldn't want that at all. But it's that balance that comes, through, and it helps us continue to unite and build a bridge between academics and herpetoculture, because herpetoculture does have a strong financial component within it, because if you're breeding, you got to do something with your babies, and you tend to like to come out ahead when selling those babies, and then you have the academics and the science. So it's having both does continue to bring those communities together and try to bridge that gap a little bit.
It's so important. How long have you been doing CCR?
22. I want to say it was somewhere around November, I think, of 22. Okay. Is when Matt Most, a mutual friend, of Zach and I both, it started off with hey, can you be available to guest host? When one of them couldn't make it because they were wanting to get on more of a routine. Zach was, and Matt was becoming more and more busy with his career just kind of soaring. And so I was like, yeah, sure. I'd love to. Again, I'm a business guy. So my thought was, not only do I already love this show and I'm a big fan, but I've got a company that I just opened in August, and I'm going to get to say that name every time I'm on this show. It makes sense, right? So I was all for it. And Zach and I hit it off quick. We already had engaged and knew each other and had talked before, but I mean, it worked very well, very quickly. And then Matt was kind of like, hey, I need to just step away completely. It just no longer had the time. So it very quickly just went to, now it was Zach and I was still hesitant, because I was not hesitant as far as wanting to do the show, but at what point am I going to step on Zach's toes if there's things I want to suggest or do or try? And we were having a conversation, and I remember, I'll never forget it. Zach says, this is our show. This is ours. We can do whatever we want with this show. Both of us. Okay. So, all right, here's what nice. I like. Just bop, 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 bop. And he loved it, and it's been like that ever since, where, it's completely equal on what we want to do, where we want to go. And I think for both of us, we've always been used to being the one that had to be in control of whatever thing we were working on. This is probably one of the first times for both of us that there was a complete equal partner in what we're doing. And we were just, again, there's never been a conflict. There's never been disagreement. At most there's been a suggestion. It's like, what if we do it this way? Oh yeah. Okay. That sounds even better. It's just like that. So it's been a very, very good relationship, and it's continuing. I mean, we've not hit a single hiccup, with us. So other than our wives complaining that we talk too much. So
where how much growth have you seen just from the podcast? I know you kind of referenced it before that it's kind of, pushed you to look at things differently and so on and so forth. But I mean, that's a long time from 2022 to now, so like how much have you changed across the board as a keeper, as a person, just from having these consistent sit downs with Zach?
Well, I tell you, I mean, one, as a keeper, it's when we keep bringing these experts on, it obviously makes me think differently. It's okay. I hadn't thought about it that way. This is a great point. And when you continue hearing the, cage sizes, naturalistic keeping, you're really like, I need to look into this more. I need to try this more. And then with one of the things I love that Zach gets, I think both of us really like to watch the other one do their thing, because it's so interesting to us. And it's funny because there's similarities in academics and business. There's correlation, let's put it that way, where it's like data analysis, or it's, or getting something approved through whatever group. There are some overlaps, but it's still so different. So like whenever I'm going over some of the business, Zach loves hearing that, but I really, really love when he's going over a journal article, because I will not have the attention span to read that damn thing. So but I want to know what it says, what do we learn from it? Right. And so I love that he takes this, makes it, palatable for guys like me that don't want to take the time to read it. And, I get to learn this stuff that normally the average layperson would have never picked up, or it had been years and years before it came tribal knowledge. So that's something else that, having this partnership has really been cool for me, on my end. And then for Zach, it's, he'll say there's times we just had a call the other day where we found another potential revenue stream for the conservation fund that really, really would work out to our benefit. And I called and let him know how we had a bad situation that was possibly taking place, not with CCR, but it would have affected things. And I got that completely reversed to the point where not only do we get that fixed, but now we may be able to do this, for the conservation fund. And,
Nice.
His exact word, Clint, you're a genius, when he hears that. So it's like when there's these different things that each of us get to see the other one do that we're just both like, wow, it's really awesome. Some of the things he gets to study and be a part of. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I get to go be a part of it. It's get to go experience a field study and things that normally in my position wouldn't happen, wouldn't necessarily be privy to. So it's a lot of that crossover that just makes it a better understanding for both of us, but really gives us an appreciation for one another at the same time.
Yeah, there's something about academics that I get so excited to talk to them, because I'll sit there and I'll think, I want to know how this works. And I know that they're going to be able to tell me. And then I'm going to be able to bounce it back to them and be like, am I getting this right? Yeah. And oh man, having Zach on. And it was funny because he called me and he's like, yeah, I do have to stop at this time, and I'm like, and he's like, I mean, that's, 3 hours. Like if we're going that long, what the fuck are we even doing? And then here we are 3 hours later, it was, I put him through the ringer, I think.
It was good. I enjoyed that episode. I watched every bit of it. And yeah, he's, like I said, he's fun, man. He's a fun guy, and he's so dang down to earth. And I think that, that's another piece that really makes it click, is the personalities mesh so dang well between the two of us. And it's neither one of us are hesitant to speak or, and I'll tell you, that's one of the things that I want to give you huge kudos for on your show, because he and we say that we're lucky because we got two of us. So when we have someone on, there better never be dead airspace, right? I mean, one of us better always have something to say, with as much as the two of us talk to, keep it, it flowing and moving, and we get to bounce so many things back and around. But when you have a solo host, that's much more difficult. We really feel that if you have a guest that is not as talkative and engaging, it's harder to keep that show on track and to keep it moving. You do very well at that, Adam. very, very well.
Oh, thank you,
And
Clint. I
we're
appreciate
both
that.
fans of this show because of it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, the stuff that was said about the show, I like I feel like it was like that whole week leading up to Christmas or somewhere around there. It was really humbling and flattering at the same time, and very kind, and I appreciate all the kind words. It's very, very nice.
Well, they come earned, my friend. They come earned.
I have a hard time accepting praise and compliments. So,
I've often said the same thing where I absolutely love to get compliments, but I hate it when they're said to me. I feel so weird.
Yeah, isn't it weird?
Look down at the floor. It's like, yeah.
It is.
It makes it awkward.
It's so bizarre. All right, man. Well, I know you got some businesses to run, and I'm sure you have a ton of work to do. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me. And is there anything else you'd like to add on?
I'll just say, if anyone who's heard about Colubrid Fest at this point, I'm telling you, make it worth it. It's going to be great. If there's anything you're going to want to experience this year in the reptile community, it's going to be that. There's nothing else like it. It is an event unlike any other. So please come join us. We'd be happy to see you, happy to meet you. And Adam, I certainly appreciate you having me on, buddy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was actually looking at Airbnbs and in what is it, Evansville?
Mm-hmm.
Evansville. Yeah.
Yep.
I was looking at Airbnbs there and I'm like, these aren't bad.
No,
if you wanted, like if you don't want to do a hotel, like you can get a really nice Airbnb with, that you could be very comfortable at, make it feel like a little 3-day vacation or something. And,
and I'm actually going to put a post out on the, if you're on Facebook, it's the official Colubrid Fest Facebook group. And in that group, I'm going to put a post as soon as I type it up where it's, if you're wanting to make your Evansville experience even better, here's the things to know. And it's like there's multiple nature preserves in the air with 30 minutes, in different directions that you can go check out. There's, here's the best pizza. So a complete coming to Evansville, it's one of the few things we get to do whenever you have someone who's lived here all their life. Get to share that information. So just trying to make it as enjoyable a visit for everybody as I can.
Now, I have a lot of Python and boa keepers that listen to this show. Yep. Can you make an argument for them to come to Colubrid Fest?
100%. One of the things we announced when we first get there and when we're kicking off Saturday, Colubrid Fest is not an exclusion event. We're not excluding other species or other keepers of other species. No, it's a celebration of colubrids. So what I would say to you is, if you don't keep colubrids and you don't think that you would be into them, whatever, come and find out why we are. That's what you would get, is you would feel why the people there are so passionate about them. It's like, I would have no problem going to a monitor fest and if it was set up like this and I got to hear all it, because I don't keep monitors. But feeling that, I'm going to give a perfect example of this. Okay. Ricky, my friend Ricky, been a friend of mine for a very, very long time. We were roommates for 10 years and have been friends for over 20. Very close with this guy. He does not care about reptiles one bit, has zero interest in reptiles. However, the very first Colubrid Fest, he came with me because he's going to help me set up, carry stuff in, all that. And he just knew that, we'd put all this work into building this, and he just kind of wanted to come check it out, see what we did. He had such a blast at Colubrid Fest. On the way home, he looked at me and he says, I'm coming to every one of these. And he has. Last year, he came to Fort Wayne to do it all over again. He does not keep any reptiles. He will never keep any reptiles, but he had so much fun with everyone. And the other thing he told me was, he goes, being here this weekend has made me realize I don't have a passion, because it was feeling the passion from everyone else really opened their eyes. There was another individual that only keeps geckos. His dad made him come with him. And he came up to me and Tinley goes, I now have 3 colubrids because of what went on there. So that's what it is, guys. Don't feel that you're going to be crapped on or anything like that because you're not a colubrid keeper. No, that's not what this is about. This is about uniting communities. And in fact, there may be ways that this expands to others in the future. Not Colubrid Fest per se, but that same kind of mentality and type of organization. We're looking at doing something else with some others, but that's it. Yeah. Python breeders, boa breeders, whatever you breed, we still like those.
Yeah.
The colubrid keepers who are here still likes all this stuff. There's ball python breeders who are there. We're not there to say what you keep is crap. We're there to celebrate this particular group. So come in and check out why we like it so much. And you may have a different opinion on it whenever you leave.
Well, and not to mention, I'm assuming that the talks are universal. A lot of the information that can be gained there can be translated to boas and pythons.
Absolutely. There's one of the talks, and I don't want to say that there is a well-known python breeder that we really gave a ribbing to last night or the night before on a call. That is. I'd say 95% sure they're going to be there, and they're going to be one of the panelists that are talking about alternative feeders.
Cool.
Very, very popular python breeder. And so that's it. I mean, alternative feeders, that's not just colubrids. That goes across the gamut, for all of us. We've had stubborn feeders, and conversations on those before. We've had naturalistic versus sterilized keeping. We've had talks on enrichment. We've had talks on quarantining. So it all, yes, it absolutely will expand far past colubrids.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I need to buy my ticket, so I have to come. I need to, because if I don't do that, and I do have social anxiety. I get a little nervous, and I'm one of those antisocial folks, despite the way that, I might present myself. Going to Daytona was painful, but it was great, seeing everybody there, and, the social aspect makes it all worthwhile. And then you kind of want to do it again as soon as it's over.
Mm-hmm. And this is, I think that it's just it was the thing that everyone said after year one. The one word that you kept hearing used was vibe. It was the vibe was unlike anything they'd ever experienced. And I remember PJ Crone described it as Colubrid Fest felt like adult summer camp, where you show up day one and you're a little nervous. You don't know everybody. It's a little weird. But by the time you leave, you're so sad that you're parting from these people, and you just made lifelong friends. It was that's how it was. It's just a completely different vibe. There.
Yeah. Well, and it helps so much, like doing the podcast, you can talk to somebody for 2 or 3 hours and you feel like, hey, I'm becoming friends with this person. And then when you see them in person, it just kind of solidifies it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Running into Cush at Stephen Cush at Daytona, it's like, as soon as we saw each other, it was a hug,
Yeah. Cush is a good guy. I just got to see him in Pomona. Like him a lot. And this year, I think it's funny. This is kind of my moment here on what this really is when it's transcending. So to me, there's a lot of icons in the industry, but the living legend, in my opinion, right now in the industry is Craig Trumbauer. I don't know if there's anyone who is more of a representation of what this hobby is, should be, and could be. And I mean, he's such a wonderful man. He has done so much within the hobby, and I've described him as he's the pap everybody wishes they had. He's such a phenomenal human being. Yeah. And he's coming to Colubrid Fest this year in Evansville, Indiana. And while I've met Craig several times, I can't help in the back of my mind feel Craig Trumbauer is coming to Evansville, Indiana because of something you helped create. Yeah. It's such a just moment, for me. And I just think things like that are just wonderful. I mean, it's going to be such a good time.
Truly. Yeah, man. All right, dude. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate you, Adam.